Hi there, everyone. If you can hear my voice, we're going to get started. So, welcome to today's session. My name is Grace Liao, and I am the Program Experience Lead here at the Quantic School of Business and Technology. Behind the scenes, want to make sure that we do a shout out to Kelsey Duggan. She's our producer and partner in crime for me. We always do this together, so I'm always so thankful for her presence. Now, you're here today, so good afternoon, good morning, and even good evening, wherever you are. We're here for another episode of Quantic Conversations, where we bring Quantic students, staff, alumni, and other community members to this stage, this LinkedIn live stage, for an engaging, insightful conversation. Thanks for taking time out of your day. We know that your time is precious, but we really hope that you get some value from the time you're going to spend here. By the way, the session is 45 minutes long and it is recorded. So if you need to step away for any reason, you can always come back to the same exact link and watch it again. And if you just want to listen to it again, feel free. Watch as many times as you want. Now, let me go over some housekeeping items before we bring our guests on stage. So, couple of things. We definitely want this to be an interactive conversation. It won't just be myself and Grant, our guest. Sure, we'll be on screen, but you are calling in and listening in from where you are. So, first of all, we always love to see this in the comment box right now. If you're able to, tell us where you're calling in from. Bonus if you tell us what you're eating and drinking. Mine is always warm water. So I have that for me, and I'm calling in from New York. And we do like our Quantic conversations to be inclusive, like I mentioned before. It's not just about me and the guest. So when you hear something that resonates with you, if you want to agree with something, if you want to add to something that we're talking about, feel free to use the comment box. It's very much an extension of the conversation. So we do want to see you participate if you want to. And by the way, if you do have a question for our guest today, you may also leave it in the comment box. And if we're able to, towards the end, we'll try to get to it. No promises on that one because we do have a lot that we want to cover, and there are so many of you out there. But definitely, if you have something on your mind, go ahead and put it in the comment box. Now, this month for us at Quantic, we've been focused on the theme of future proofing your career as we're hosting our various events, many for Quantic students within the community, and then events like this, which is extended to anyone else in the world. And so we thought it was really appropriate, especially at the beginning of the year, and certainly in the interesting times that we're living in, that keeping your career top of mind is something great to talk about. One thing we do know is that change is absolutely inevitable. Now, today's Quantic conversation is titled Become Indispensable in Any Economy. And it's something that all of us have at the back of our minds, maybe hovering in our minds. And certainly today, with my chat with Grant, we want to bring these thoughts to the front of our minds and also do it together. There's something powerful about having conversations together. We realize that we have a vast audience literally all over the world, and each of you is in your own unique situations with job, career, and life. So these conversations are not an end to themselves, but we want to start thinking, spark thinking, inspiration, reflection, and really hopefully for you to continue conversations after this. Now, I'd love to now bring onto stage our guest today, Grant Glaser, with over a decade of experience in technology. Grant has worked in roles spanning sales, solution engineering, learning design, strategy and innovation, leadership, and enablement. He currently works with leaders as an executive coach at Salesforce. Working one on one and in small groups, he helps identify strengths and growth areas to support their onboarding, ramp, and development as leaders. Grant holds a degree in psychology and communications from Western University in Ontario, Canada, a certificate in organizational leadership from the University of Toronto, and an executive MBA from Quantic. He graduated in September 2021, and he's currently completing his associate certified coach credential at the Coactive Training Institute. And when he's not doing all those very important things, he's tinkering with tech, delving into personal development phenomena. Grant is an avid fitness fan and outdoor junkie. running, biking, hiking, swimming. I bet there's probably more. Those are probably just a few. And he's absolutely a lifelong learner, really where I connected with him deeply. And he loves to expand his mind with a good podcast, video, book, or movie. So I think, Grant, we are ready for you to, if we were in a talk show, you'd be running out behind the curtains onto stage right now.
Hi, Grace.
Let's do a pretend high five.
There we go.
All right, Grant. So, and just audience, in case you know Grant, and maybe you, many of you probably don't. Grant and I go back a while. I did interview you, right, for admissions. It was so long ago.
You stole my thunder, Grace. I was going to say fun
Oh, you're
fact.
gonna say, let me switch over to you. Over to you, Grant. Why don't you say hi to the audience and give us a little more introduction of yourself?
Grace, you did such a wonderful, beautiful job. Thank you. I feel flattered. But yes, the fun fact for folks listening now is I should start by saying sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Grant. I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada, hence the red shirt here in the lovely Weston apartment I live. It's a little snowy outside. I've finished my coffee and I've moved on to water, not warm water, Grace. But yes, my fun fact was Grace and I go way back. Two G's in a pod. Grace interviewed me for my initial Quantic interview. And it was, I think, a 15-minute call that was supposed to be short, sweet, and finished. And it ended up being like 30 or 45 minutes. And now we
Yes,
have
we
since grown a wonderful, wonderful LinkedIn and online relationship, which is beautiful. We message each other with updates and news. And it's such a wonderful surprise to see you in the inbox, Grace. So I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm shocked and incredibly impressed with how many global individuals we have. I see greetings from Serbia. We have folks from Munich. We have folks from South Africa. We have folks from Canada. I think I saw my mom and dad in the chat there from Thornhill, Ontario. So we have a global audience. Lovely to be here. Thank you, everyone, for taking 45 minutes out of your day, no matter what time it is, day or night, to be here. I am privileged and honored to be here with you and the online community.
Amazing. Yeah, I never get tired of seeing where everyone's calling in from. So I mean, I'm always up for a conversation. That's why I'm so lucky I get to do this forum. And Grant, it's always so fun to talk to you. Not just fun, but always productive in my mind. And so today's topic, which is, kind of like, ooh, what's this going to be about? Are you going to tell me how I'm going to be able to literally future-proof my career and to kind of, I guess, dive in, but not dive in too hard is I and you and I were talking about different ways to kind of approach this conversation because um, we are living in kind of a crazy time right now, and it kind of feels crazier, and especially even on LinkedIn, where all of us are there to learn and understand and develop ourselves professionally, but also see news and what's going on with people. So, kind of, I'd like to start with let's just kind of talk about where we're at right now and what we're seeing in the world. And even if we're not directly connected to some of the things going on, for instance, I mean, really, it's not an elephant in the room anymore. They're just in the last few months, so many changes with big tech companies, the layoffs, and all the news that we're seeing from individuals and also just broadly speaking. What, and just you personally, or from a professional point of view, what is your, I guess, take and perspective on what's going on right now in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think no one here is a stranger. We're all on LinkedIn. We see a lot of notes.
Yeah.
I think there's two thoughts I think about when I see it. One is having a sense of grace, no pun intended, and compassion for the folks that have been impacted. I'm privileged sitting here in a role that I still get to say I am working and employed, but there's hundreds of thousands of people that aren't. And it's hard. I mean, that's really, really crummy, no matter which way you slice it. So having a level of empathy and compassion for folks that are either going through that, I think that's probably super important. Another area, another thing that I think has dawned on me as the weeks have passed, and Salesforce is not immune to it. I think no big tech company is. Retail is feeling it a lot. It's kind of a grim reminder that when rubber meets the road and the economy takes a nosedive, we aren't necessarily indispensable to the topic of today's conversation. But I think to the polarizing, or at least the polar opposite of that, is where we are indispensable, or to recognize where we are indispensable, are things like our friends, our family, our loved ones. Those folks we are indispensable to. And so it's a very grim reminder that, when, again, the economy takes a nosedive, things happen, it contracts, and that might be a necessary evil for us to get back to a bull market and for things to start going up again. And that's hard, and that's terrible, and that's really frustrating. But not to hopefully be so intertwined and enmeshed your fabric and identity with perhaps a job or a career. And I know that's a privileged position to speak from, but it's sometimes a helpful reminder, at least for me, that where you are indispensable as a human being, not just an employee, is the people that matter most in your life. That could be a child, a loved one, a parent, a father, a mother. That's where indispensability, I think, shines more than ever. And so sometimes it takes something really dark like this to realize there are parts in our lives where we are indispensable, irrespective from maybe the job we were currently in or not in. At least that's how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, something you just said really stood out to me, and when I listen to our guest talk, I am always, my mind kind of, it's like a radar for a certain thing. But you said something about being too enmeshed, and our identity is too intertwined with, let's say, our jobs or my role as a mother, or, by the way, that's a whole other conversation, the whole mother and son thing. Oh my goodness. But regardless of whether there is change or upheaval in our life, even when things seem like they're going fine, um, the idea that we can easily become too enmeshed and our identities too linked to certain things is actually quite powerful. I think the reminder piece that I'm also thinking about, the other side of the coin, is maybe for some of us life is fine right now. Maybe nothing is. It doesn't seem like when I read the news and I, let's say, read about layoffs, I'm like, well, I am lucky, but I also need to remind myself, hold on a second, do I need to reflect on how enmeshed I am in my current role, even at Quantic, for instance? So even the title of being indispensable in any economy, no matter if things are going well or things are not going great. Do you have anything more to add to that? The idea, do you see people becoming too enmeshed in their job, let's say, as a career coach?
Yeah, I mean, so for some context, the short answer is yes. And I think it's a challenge. I struggle with it too. And I think the activity I often work through with folks, at least in a leadership capacity, is zooming out of the proverbial Google map. So, for example, I'll have a conversation with a leader and they're very, very much entwined in what they do. And as we should be, right? People are program managers, project managers, maybe you're a software developer, maybe you're a leader, maybe you're in educational design, whatever you work in, you're probably working in that because you have some level of engagement, passion, and desire to do that job. And if you didn't, then you're either just doing it because you need something economically to support yourself or your family. But most people have some level of enjoyment, hopefully, or passion for what they're doing. And that's a very, I mean, the cognitive dissonance and the pulling apart of, if suddenly you wake up one morning and you don't have that job, a piece of you, a part of your identity is suddenly gone. And that's hard. Imagine if you are Grace extraordinaire at Quantic and you love doing virtual events or real events and you meet all these students, and one day you wake up and that's totally gone. A piece of you has been stripped away, and that's hard. And I think when I say zoom out of the Google map, is at the core, you are still you, the person is still themselves, the individual still has hobbies, attributes, life, passions that sit outside of that bubble. And so sometimes when I chat with a leader and we ask, what are you struggling with or challenged with right now? They get very myopic in one very specific area. And it's hard to see kind of the forest from the trees. And so when I say zoom out of the map, I try and say is if your job or your life's goal and purpose was a map, and you're looking at a city, let's call it London, England. You're looking at London, England. There's roads and there's pipelines and there's different cities and towns. But if you can start to look a little bit larger, you start to see the outline of London and UK, and you see water surrounding that, and you see other countries surrounding that. And it's a very meta kind of enigmatic thought. But all of a sudden, there are these other structures and other things that are still important and around your life. And so I'm not here to say that I'm a wizard or I have the utmost internal connection to that activity, but it certainly helps when someone's so blinders on and stuck in one very specific way of thinking, to
Mm-hmm.
realize that there's still other parts and aspects of their life that are important. That could be a hobby, that could be a skill, that could be something they enjoy, it could be
Mm-hmm.
having a conversation, it could be a host of different things. And sometimes we all just need a minute to look back a little bit and realize, oh my goodness, this one problem that consumed my life and my eyes
Yeah.
isn't necessarily the thing that's going to completely rock me off of my day to day.
Mm-hmm. I love the image of a map. I'm not a great map reader, I have to say, in real life, but I think it's such a wonderful metaphor for so many things. And when you talk about the necessity, really, to zoom out. Now, whether maybe you have an example of how you end up zooming out for yourself personally, are there things or people in your life or things that somehow help you to remind yourself to zoom out? And so I'm asking more of a personal question. What works for you, Grant, to kind of shake you out of your, like, hyper focus on certain things?
Yeah, shake the snow globe, if you will. I personally, I mean, this isn't novel, and I'm sure there's lots of folks here that have maybe practiced this, but I like the idea of time delay. So that's the headline. It's time delay against your problem. And what I mean by that is, let's take, for example, maybe it's 4 o'clock somewhere in the world for someone right now, and they are finishing a work day, and their manager or boss has just dropped something on their lap. This happened to me the other week, actually. It was about
Yeah.
4:15. I was having a normal day. Manager calls me on my phone and me, oh, there's this big thing I suddenly have to do. And all of a sudden, my day that was going nice and calm and normal was flipped on its head because it was 4:15, the day was almost done, and I had this new thing due for me on Friday, right before I was going into the weekend. And I remember getting I was like, okay, so what's happening here? Everything happens here for us. We're all thinking, we're all doing. And I was like, okay, but what's actually happening here? And I
Mm.
felt a little tense and I got really tight. Breath started getting a little quicker. And I felt that sense of angst and kind of anxiety and the tightening of your stomach. And I was like, oh God, here we go. And all of a sudden, it's like lights started to dim and I got that tunnel vision and I had to get
Mm.
this thing done. And I had tabs open and decks getting spun
Mhm.
up. And I try to remind myself, a problem today is going to be a problem tomorrow, or an issue today is probably going to be an issue tomorrow. And it's certainly not life or death, and it wasn't life or death. So I had the capacity to realize that this wasn't a cataclysmic or life altering thing. If someone happens to a loved one or family member, that's something you realize you have to act on. And so when I say time delay, I said, all right, I'm going to take a look at this request as pragmatically as I can. But I'm not going to actually work on it this evening because it's 4:15 and I have 45 minutes to finish the day. And I'm going to wake up tomorrow at 7:30. I'll pour myself a cup of coffee and I'll get cracking at it. But I'll give it the evening to just try and sit on it unless it's super urgent. And so
Mm.
the day finished. I think I went for a walk. I had dinner. I woke up early the next day. I sat down and just the sleep, just the 6 or 7 hour sleep and having fresh
Mhm.
eyes and a fresh cup of coffee and looking at it, I already felt a sense of, all right, okay, I've had a minute for it to sit with me. I feel fresh in terms of how I'm looking and approaching it. And now I'm going to tackle it not in this state of frantic fury or stress or high anxiety. And it didn't
Right.
mean that the problem went away or suddenly someone miraculously did my work. I still had to do the work. But I think instead of doing it from a place of high cortisol, really freaked out, oh my God, I have to do this or I won't show up. If I had the benefit and privilege of being able to give it 4 or 5, even an evening to sleep on,
Yeah.
it was amazing to me how the next day I was able to come at it with fresh eyes, a little bit of a calmer demeanor, and a little bit more centered. And I felt that the work I did after that, as a result, was a little better.
So better. That's so interesting. When I That's so interesting, and the fact that you had the discipline at the moment to almost override your emotions. Look, a lot of these things that we talk about, work, family, there's a huge layer of emotion that goes with it and reaction, and I am no stranger to that. I react to a lot of things. So for you to have that moment where you realize, okay, hold on a second, before this consumes me, I think that's a really key muscle to work on for all of ourselves. When I think of myself and work and I'm thinking, how am I going to make myself indispensable to my team, to my manager, to my colleagues? I I'm old-fashioned. I work hard. I work hard and I will respond as quickly as I can. And I just somehow I think I tell myself that, not a lie, but I tell myself, yeah, if I just do more and do it faster, it'll make me more valuable. And
Hey,
and
Grace,
in the world, yeah,
fun activity.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt.
absolutely. Go for it.
So I love it because you said you do more and you work hard and you do more. A fun way I remind myself, and I do
Mm.
an activity I do with a lot of the leaders I work with is right in front of me here. I'll show it. Everyone can feel free to steal this because it's something I stole from a colleague. Wait, I keep two stickies in front of my desktop on my monitor. The first sticky, and you see it says to do. It
Yes,
has a
I
bunch of
see.
checklists and lines. And on the other
Mhm.
sticky, it has to be.
Oh my gosh, little hearts on there.
And so the story is, and many
Yeah.
folks have maybe heard this, but a good concept in life coaching, or a good concept in life coaching, which I'm obviously very much learning and I practice, is, we're human beings by from formal definition. We are human beings. We are here to be as humans. But what we often find ourselves overcorrecting or overarching on is doing. We do a lot of things. Everyone in
Mm,
the audience, I'd love to see in a comment, who loves a good to-do list and checking off the to-do list, did the laundry, took the kids to soccer practice, made dinner, went to bed at a certain time, have to pay the bills, have to do this. We're really good at this. We're
yeah,
really good at doing. But I
yeah.
think the subtraction in that equation from doing sometimes too much is we forget how we want to be. How the hell do you want to how do
Mm,
you want to actually be when you do? And so, for
mm,
example, for you and me, Grace, when we were chatting about this idea of always doing things, or maybe for someone in a company, you want to be there for you want to do the team meeting, you want to finish your reports at the end of the day, you want to finish the project you're on, you want to close out tickets, you want to make sure that everything is completely done before the week. That's all good, and it's good. It's not right, wrong, good or bad. You can't
right,
not do. Life's about doing
mm,
things,
right,
but it's a cool reminder, I find, of reminding yourself, how do you want to be? How do you want to be
mm,
when you do these things? Do you want to be miserable and sad and frustrated and unhappy? Or do you want to be content and fulfilled and excited and enjoyed? And as much as we can, I find it helpful to remind ourselves this sticky has to be in balance with this sticky. It can't be too much one or the other.
like,
So that's a fun
yeah.
trick. I keep it right in front of me. It's a good reminder for me sometimes. I see pink and green and I'm like, okay, cool, Grant. You have to do a lot of things on the to-do list for today. Let's not forget how you want to be as a human at the same time.
I love that. I do have sticky notes that I haven't been using, so I'm going to give that one a go. Um, and maybe we'll come back to this idea as we continue to keep talking, because I am kind of feeling a theme a little bit here. The idea of being indispensable, because being indispensable in the economy, it's kind of, it's not a promise that anyone can actually deliver. It's actually, none of us are indispensable. That's the reality, and the world will change even if I'm who I am and I do everything I can. I do all the things on the to-do list, tick every single box. That doesn't change the fact that the world I have no control over will do its thing. So then the idea of being truly indispensable to some of the things you said earlier, which is, who am I? What matters to me? Those are the things that I think we have a greater chance of having some sense of stability and centeredness. And that's kind of what I'm drawing from the wisdom that you're kind of sprinkling through the conversation. Does that sound, am I reflecting correctly what I think I'm hearing?
You're moderating wonderfully, Grace. You've heard all the things I feel heard, understood, listened to. You're nailing it.
Excellent. And I think we can still continue to spread to kind of sprinkle that throughout. We do have a really great question that came in through the comment box. If you're game to answer it, how do, and you can see it's also, how do you recover mentally after putting your life into a company that's in a niche industry and now you are having to pivot out?
Let's see. Kelsey, thanks for the note. Well, thanks for copying over the question. I wish I knew this from specifically. How do you recover mentally after putting your life into a company that's a niche industry? And now you're having to pivot out? That's a good segue, Grace, to kind of what I've been thinking a lot about. So thank you for the question. And it's a perfect thing to talk about indispensable. How do you become more indispensable? I've thought a lot lately about skills. And so to this individual's question about, okay, so you've poured 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 years into a company that's super, super, super niche. I'm willing to guess that irrespective of how niche that company was, there was some level of skill that you were able to either apply, learn, or get better at. And so I don't know the specific niche, but let's take, for example, you worked in, you were working in a trucking industry and you were fixing very specific parts on a truck. That doesn't apply to mainstream trucking or even mainstream mechanics. I would imagine there's still some skill there. You learned how to use your hands, you learned how to repair certain things. Perhaps there were tools that applied to other things, but not to the broad industry. At the core, I would imagine, and I would hope that there is some skill that you either learned, improved, or got really good at. And so I think this notion of indispensability and being indispensable for me comes back to skills. Everyone hopefully has some level of skill. And sometimes that relates to the job you're doing or the job you were in. So in this case, if you're leaving that company, I hope that there's some level of skill you bring with you. For others, that might be a skill that's not even applicable or related to your job. Grace, you and I joked about maybe that's you learned to bake sourdough bread over the pandemic. Or maybe you took up painting. Or perhaps you did things with your hands where you work an office job and you do things less with your hands. At the core, I think we all as individuals have some level of skill. Now, the question you might ask yourself is, okay, Graham, well, how do I figure out if I have a skill or not if I don't know what my skills are? And that's fair. Some people are like, look, I don't necessarily know my skills. And a fun thought exercise I love to do on myself and ask of some of the folks I work with is pretend for a minute there was a stage with thousands of people about to listen to your conversation, your talk. What would you feel comfortable or more comfortable doing if someone were to push you out on that stage right now and you had to give a 30-minute speech or talk on something, some topic, some concept that you wouldn't have to watch YouTube or research or read a book on? It can be anything. It could be how to bake sourdough bread. It could be how to clearly communicate. It could be how to build a PowerPoint presentation or make a good Google slide template. It could be how to color in the lines in an adult coloring book, whatever it might be. But I would be willing to venture a guess that 9 out of 10 or more people on this conversation today probably have something they could speak passionately about for 30 minutes. And if you do, maybe that's a skill worth tugging on a little bit. And perhaps that's related to your job. Maybe you're a software developer or program manager or product manager or product owner or a salesperson or an accountant or a lawyer. But there is a skill there. And if you could speak about it to a family member or a friend or an audience of 2,000 for 30 minutes, that might be a light bulb moment to say, that's something I could harp on. And so that's a lot of words, Grace. I'll pause for a moment and see if there's anything you want to unpack.
Well, I was thinking about what would I talk about in front of people for 30 minutes, but I love the framing of it. This is what's so powerful about hearing yourself, other people actually outside of our normal sphere, to help us zoom out and kind of reframe things. I think reframing things is something that's I'm hearing a lot about as far as navigating change, or if you feel like you have to navigate change, and reframing even in this conversation right now, which is we're kind of telling the audience or throwing this idea out to the audience of, okay, hold on, there might be other ways to look at things. And you'd be surprised that, like you said, every single one of us, we have something, we have the raw materials. Some are obvious and some maybe not so obvious. And so it's to the person who asked the question, niche company, maybe niche set of skills, maybe very specialist. That's something we talk about a lot in the MBA program, because many people come to us with very specialist technical skills and wanting to become much more broader and generalist. But then also, I think in all that process, you discover, oh, I do have transferable skills. Maybe I'm a classroom teacher, so maybe I'm teaching mathematics to fourth graders.
Yeah.
But woven right into that is my skill to project manage, my skill to communicate difficult concepts into simple ones. So then to start to extract and label and pick out the skills that we already and have built into us takes a little bit of process. And I think, I think hopefully people listening out there right now are going to think, oh, maybe I should think of it this way. So I really love the illustration that you gave. Um, and you mentioned also skills that we can that apply, learn, or get better at. So would you say that there's really no end to how much we can improve ourselves or change and transfer?
Absolutely. So here's another fun one on that. Let's pull that skill analogy a little bit more, or story.
Yeah.
So let's say you've identified your skill. You're ready. You have this topic. You're going to walk on that stage and you're going to talk about, let's use our sourdough bread making.
Okay.
If we picture our skill as a continuum, and here is expert level. You are the utmost sourdough baker. You know how to create a starter. I see Stephanie in the chat there. She's a sourdough wizard. Let's say you're an expert sourdough maker. You can get your starter going. You can bake your bread. And on the other end, you have never even considered baking bread in life. So if you've identified this baking skill as a skill, you're probably somewhere on that continuum. Let's take a more work-related approach. If you're a project manager and you've got your PMP certification, or you've done some work in project management, maybe you've worked for 3 or 5 years, you have some level of skill. You probably know about Agile, you know about Waterfall, you know about how to manage a Scrum team, or you have a Scrum Master and you've actually managed a project. On that continuum, there will always be people that are likely more experienced and have more knowledge, and maybe you're aspiring to get there. That's the growth. That's the knowledge acquisition that you savor. The more you work, the more you grow, the more you learn, the more experience you get. But if this is super expert and this is super new and novel, maybe you're somewhere in the middle. There will always be people that you will aspire to grow into and learn more from. But there's also a group of people that want to be likely where you are. And so if I bring it back to becoming indispensable, if this is a skill you enjoy and you like and you love project management, and that's a career path you've chosen, that's the skill you bring, irrespective of the company or the job you're in. I think a part of making that skill transferable and indispensable is how can you serve, help, or help people grow that are before you in your time horizon. So if I'm a project manager that has 5 years of experience and I've just completed my PMP, there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people that want to be a PMP certified project manager that don't have 3 to 5 years of experience and that could probably learn from you. Now, if we take it even further and you say, well, cool, Grant, I don't really have hours in the day to talk to everyone on LinkedIn who reaches out to me, wants to learn about project management. Yeah. That's fair. We all have families and we all need to support it. But if we're taking it to the capitalistic view, well, how could you do to monetize that level of knowledge? Everyone can go on YouTube and learn things today, and Wikipedia and free resources, but I don't think it's so much access to content. It's more so people want access to consolidated information. And you, that person who has 5 years of project management experience, could probably offer a workshop, create a community, build a course, write up an ebook, maybe host a webinar, and maybe offer that in the form of a product or a service to these individuals who want to become better project managers. And I think once you start to see the horizon and say, I actually have some knowledge in project management, and there's people that want to be where I am in project management, and I can help those people. Yeah. It's not about gouging and charging an exorbitant amount of money, but your knowledge is valuable not only to you, but certainly to the people who want to be where you are, just like you want to be where the folks ahead of you are. And I think there's something to be said about offering your expertise, knowledge, and skill to the folks who are in line wanting to have that knowledge and skill in a way that's exciting and offering and helpful. I mean, it doesn't have to be you start a university, but it can be something that you offer to people to get where you want to go. Because we're all on the skill continuum, right? I'm learning to be a certified coach. There are coaches ahead of me that have 20 years of experience and thousands of clients and are way more knowledgeable and wise than I am. And I would love to learn from them. And so I think that's a skill that I'm trying to pull on and tug on a little bit. Anyway, I'm getting long in the tooth, Grace. So I'll call it a day there.
Oh, you're fine. You're good. You're good. This is I love conversations, obviously, because I get to chat and express things. But if there were like a visual that kind of like is right above our heads while we're talking and kind of measuring the brain waves, what I love about conversations that start off, they are topical. We are talking about who we are as professionals and individuals. But I love my brainwaves are just like constantly spiking up and down because there's always something in the things that the person across from me is saying that I either didn't think of or I haven't articulated, and you're articulating it. And then me listening and then bouncing that back and forth, I think is an incredibly powerful exercise. And even for a topic that would at first feel like, are we going to talk about like something uncomfortable? I don't think so. I think it needs to be talked about. I want to ask you from as a thriving, growing, and learning career coach slash leader, and basically someone who supports and helps people in their careers and personal lives. I definitely see both. If I were a client and I'm freaking out. The job that I thought I'd always have, or I'd have for a long time, or something unexpected happened, and I am laid off, and I'm in a state and confused. How might you coach me or approach talking to me?
What is it that you need right now, Grace? So I'll
don't know.
pause.
Yeah.
That's an example. So that's a lovely question in coaching to ask is if someone approaches you in life or in a coaching consultation with, I'm freaking out right now, I'm having a really like, I'm just having a hard time. I mean, there's a couple avenues you can take. In one case, you might really turn it around and just ask, what is it? What is the thing you need from me right now? And that might be like, I just need someone to hear me out. Like, I'm feeling really stressed out. I need to talk about it. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm gonna be quiet. I want to be right here with you for 10, 15 minutes, and I want to consume and listen to everything you're saying. You might turn around and say, I need some help and guidance on like what I'm going to do next because I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. So the intention of that question is, what is it that you need right now? It helps serve two things. One is you're not assuming what the person needs or trying to fix their problem.
Yeah.
And it gives ownership and agency to the coachee, the person who's in that very acute situation, the benefit of saying, here's what I need. Now, they might come back to you and say, well, I don't know what I need. I'm freaking out. Yeah. In which case you might say, okay, would it be helpful if, and then you can offer a thought. But the intention of at least a career or life coach is there's an intrinsic belief that the person on the other end of that conversation is resourceful, capable, and smart. So it is not on me to assume or try and fix or solve your problems. I have an inherent belief that what you're grappling with, you can handle and you can manage. The role of a coach is to try and ask great questions, be curious about where things are going, and help guide it so that you go from a place of now to a place of tomorrow. The difference between that and maybe a therapeutic relationship or a therapist is I'm not as interested in the traumatic history or past. There is absolutely a place for that, where therapists need to talk about something that may have happened in the past quite deeply that affected you emotionally. In a coaching environment or engagement, I want to understand where you are now and where you want to go tomorrow. And so anyway, to answer the initial question is like, how would I react to someone saying like, I'm freaking out, I'm having a really hard time? Yeah. One of a question I found really helpful is to say, you can empathize with them. Wow, that sounds challenging. What would be most helpful? What can I give you? What do you need right now?
Yeah, I love that. Even for you to pause me a little bit, to kind of me as the one coping with the moment, or maybe just filled with emotion and demands, a to-do list, bills to pay. Just it would be so easy for anyone to get very caught up. And so for an individual who is objective and also sees that I am resourceful, smart, and capable, to pause me for a moment, I think is quite powerful. Yeah, I didn't plan that question with you. I just thought, it'd be a really fun one to
throw me a curveball.
Yeah. No, but it's all within the context of exploring. I feel like our conversation is kind of exploring what are the possible angles that some of us are not thinking of or need to be reminded of. And I think that's what's so powerful about this. Let me just double check to see if we have, I think we're good. And by the way, the comments are great. I see there's some really great conversation happening there, which is what we love to see. Um, Ying pointed something out that though we just have to be indispensable to ourselves. So maybe let's spend the last couple minutes coming back to, all right, what does this mean? What does this title mean? Being in the indispensable in any economy, maybe any life situation. What would, maybe if there are two or three thoughts of or reminders of how I can be quote unquote indispensable in my world, work and life.
Yeah, I think if I were to try and bucket it to three things, I think indispensability to me or in this economy comes back to some level of prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
If you are impacted by a layoff and you're feeling down and out, that's okay. Give yourself the grace and a minute to accept and come to terms with that. That's hard. You can't just move right past it. Very similar to a grief cycle, right? If you've been working for 5 or 10 years at a company, you wake up to no job. That's really hard. But once you've made it through some of those emotions and you waded through some of that, I think the indispensable part comes back to prioritizing what is indispensable and who are you indispensable to. Is that yourself? Absolutely. Your wealth, your health, your wellness, your family, your loved ones, the people that you care most about. Those aren't things that are dispensable. Those are absolutely dispensable. They are what support you and keep you up. And it's probably what you help keep them up and healthy and wealthy and loving. So I think prioritization is absolutely paramount. The other thing I think, again, is skills. If you are feeling rocky, I mean, I've certainly felt rocky. I certainly had the same questions. Well, I have a job. I work in the technology world. And so the second, I think, bucket first is prioritization. Get clear on what's important and what is indispensable to you and to others in your life. The second is take a really cool, close look at skills. What skills do you have either from the job you're currently in or the job you had or the job you may one day go get? And the exercise I think we chat about was this notion of what if you were to go in front of a TED stage and give a 30-minute conversation, would you feel comfortable doing right now? No research, no videos, no books, no additional education. That can help you find what could I actually talk about? Like, what am I skillful enough talking about it? And then I think the third piece is, and this might sound a little, I don't know, it's a little cliche, but I recently read a book by Liz Wiseman, the second one, called Impact Players. It's actually right behind me here. So her first book was Multipliers.
Yeah.
And then she wrote a second book called Impact Players. And so the first is prioritization. The second is think about skills. And the third is impact players. Whether you're in a job now or you're not, or you will be in a job tomorrow or a different job, the ethos and the theme of the book Impact Players was sometimes we sign up for a job that has a requisition and bullet points and it's described as a job. And a week, 2 months, a year later, that job slightly morphs and slightly changes. And it used to be that you could show up and say, well, hey, wait a second, I didn't sign up for this job. That's not what I'm supposed to do. And that's fair if you sign up to be an accountant and they're asking you to be an astronaut. You know, those are two very different jobs. But at least in the corporate world, sometimes you sign up for a job and there are going to be certain things that change and adapt. And I think part of the level of indispensability is, are you known to be the person that shows up and does the job that's needed to be done, even though it's not exactly what was outlined maybe a week or a month or a year ago? And become known for that person, as Liz puts in the book, as the impact player. Become known as the person that's willing to do the thing, even if it's not the thing you initially exactly signed up for. But I'll make a caution. It doesn't mean not doing things that are completely out of left field and not meant for what you do. Again, if you're an accountant and they're asking you to be an astronaut, that won't work. But if you work in a certain role and there's a tangential ask or request, become the person that's known, that's willing to say, you know what, I can learn something from this, I can grow something from this, I can help others with something like from this. And I think when it comes down to it, the person that sees you as, or the leadership team that sees you as the person willing to do the thing that wasn't originally the thing you signed up for, it may not make you indispensable, but it'll certainly make you a lot more desired and hopefully the person that they keep leaning on, because you're willing to go that fraction of a second or fraction of a mile quicker or beyond what just the job said from day one.
Okay, that's really good reminder. What our understanding of my role within an organization and how I can bring value, even if it's a little bit beyond or outside of or tangentially connected to what's on that job description. Because there's definitely a dynamic in the workforce where, okay, well, this is the job you gave me. I'm not going to do more than that. Kind of, and there's reason for that too, because there, of course, you are given a role and a description, but there's this, I guess, this flexibility, creative ways of creating more value, not to necessarily become indispensable. I think that would be not something we should assume, but I think just, and also just being who you are. I think some of us just kind of need to do the things within our jobs that make sense for me, that help me express who I am as an individual. So I stay true to myself, but also in the context of an organization so that there's a higher chance that we'll be looked at. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're actually just at time, and keep going with the conversation, everyone. This actually is a topic that probably could go on and on because there's so many different subtopics that go into. Grant, do you have any closing thoughts for the audience as we wrap up? Or what are you working on next? Oh, sorry.
Well, two things. One is just a huge thank you, Grace, Kelsey, and everyone that joined. Again, 45 minutes out of your day is no small feat. So I appreciate everyone just jumping on. I certainly can't promise to be the answer to all things. I think the second thought is, I know the topics has become indispensable in the economy, and I think that the pragmatist in me and maybe the pragmatist in you recognizes that the idea of indispensability in the corporate world environment, there is no such thing. And that's the reality I face, and I think it's the reality we all face. But I think we can approximate or get closer to this idea of what would it mean to feel more comfortable knowing that when we work for another corporation or another company, that's the risk we're inherently taking on. Unless we want to become sole proprietors and business owners, where we have all the control and power. Even then, what you sacrifice in working for an employer and you become the employer, you also then take on payroll and the ability to maintain and manage staff. So I think it might be a bit of a misstarter that indispensability doesn't exist. But I think what we can do is, if we get clear on our priorities, we get clear on what skills we offer and can provide and grow into, and we can get clear on what it means to be great in the role we're in or in the role we will be in, then we'll bolster our ability to become closer to true indispensability. But this idea of like it's a 0 or 100%, I mean, that's unfortunately, I don't think the world we're in. When we sign up for someone else to work for them, that's inherently the risk we take. We can just do the best we can. Yeah. Or we can become the provider and creator and employer ourselves. But with that comes its own concerns and worries. And there's no sure thing there either. And so the reframe or perspective I would offer, I think that I try and consider myself, and I think I would share with everyone is less about how can I become 100% bulletproof and indispensable versus how can I bolster what's important to me, what skills I provide, and then do great stuff either in the job I'm in now or the job I'll be in tomorrow or the job I create for myself.
Yeah. All right. And that's a wonderful note for us to leave it on. Grant, it's always a pleasure and so fun, not just fun, but very insightful. And I always walk away thinking about something. And I think that's what's powerful about having, I know we have such audience. Thank you so much for, like Grant said, taking time out of your day. It's not a small thing. 45 minutes is a pretty valuable slice of time in your very busy days. And you can let your children back in the room now and tell your boss that you're available for meetings. We hope you join us for a future Quantic conversation. We'll have more next month. And we'll be getting into AI and basically the future verse in the coming months. But this January, hopefully we all have a chance to reframe our lives and our professions a tiny bit toward the direction of being indispensable. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Grace.
Bye, Grant.
See you on LinkedIn.